Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 962, November the 19th, 2019, Tuesday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, so widely reported, very many media outlets reporting today that the Inspector General, Huckleberry Horowitz, will testify on December the 11th, and he will be testifying to the Senate Judiciary Committee. That's, of course, headed by Lindsey Graham. Okay, so what does that tell us? Well, it tells us that the Inspector General knows that the report will be out by then, because he only comes to testify after the report has been released. So we know that it'll probably be released somewhere a week or a couple of days within the date before the 11th. So we can assume probably somewhere in that week between the 2nd and the 9th of December is probably somewhere in that week is where the IG report will fall. And then, of course, we'll get Horowitz in to testify on December 11th. I don't know how many days he's going to testify for a report that's 500 pages long and has as much in it as this report allegedly does. I don't know that they can get all their questions answered in one day. It might take a couple days, maybe a week. Who knows? I don't know how many days or if it's just one day. But anyway, we do know now that Inspector General Huckleberry Horowitz is going to testify to the Senate Judiciary Committee on December 11th, by which time the report will be out. And that's kind of a critical date. I think, like a lot of people, I believe that these so-called the Inquisition that they're running over there in the Senate Intelligence Committee with the bug-eyed fool has a lot to do with running interference for the IG report coming out. In other words, I think that they want to have this impeachment inquiry to be the big thing that everybody's talking about. So when the IG report comes out, that can be just kind of pushed aside. And they can say, oh, well, yeah, the IG, oh, yeah, that report about whatever he was looking into, it doesn't matter. That's nothing really. Everything is really important here is the impeachment. You know, this is why I think that this whole thing was set up and timed the way it was to counter the IG report coming out, because it's obviously going to be bad news for certain individuals connected to Democrats and some Democrats themselves. So this is interesting, because I think that Schiff is going to, and Madame Botox are going to want the sort of high point of their inquisition to occur somewhere around the date of the release of the IG report. They'll want to have some bombshell witness or whatever. They'll want to give the media something they can use. So on the day of the release of the IG report, or the day that Horowitz comes and testifies, that there's something else that they can look at that they can say is much more interesting, well worth your time to pay attention to, while completely ignoring Horowitz's testimony as well as the release of the IG report. So I think there's something going on here between those two events. And so what this tells me is that now that we have this date, I expect that the bug-eyed fool and Madame Botox will try to really accelerate what they're doing in the next, because now they're looking at probably thinking, okay, well, we've got about 3 weeks or so. So I think that they're really going to try hard, to push through as much as they can, because what I think that they would like is to have an actual impeachment vote, probably around the date of the release. I think that that's the big story that they want to have, is the actual impeachment vote. Remember, what they voted on before was just a vote to have an inquiry to investigate whether or not there's enough evidence to impeach the president. So I think that this is probably the game plan. So I think that you can expect to see a flurry of activity over the next 2 weeks in the committee where the lynching is being held. And then, of course, they're going to need a couple of days to browbeat members and do a head count to see what kind of numbers they have to support impeachment. Because I'm not 100% sure that they'll get the numbers. If they don't come up with something pretty solid, they may find a lot of Democrats going, wait a minute, we voted for this investigation to move forward, the inquiry to move forward, and it has moved forward, and we voted for it. But now after a month of all these witnesses and all these hearings, there really isn't much there. And for me to vote to go forward with impeachment, there needs to be something there. Now, of course, Schiff and Pelosi will try to manufacture abuse of power, this, that, the other thing. None of it will stick, of course, once it gets into the Senate. But this is what they need for their members. And so it'll be interesting to watch exactly how this plays out. If, in fact, Pelosi and the bug-eyed fool can keep the wheels on the thing for another 2 weeks, which I'm not so sure they can. Every day it gets worse and worse for them. In fact, there was just a story today in a left-wing publication that only 5% of Americans are even paying attention to the Inquisition. So they're not delivering anything that's motivating people to pay attention. And unless they come up with something in the next 2 to 3 weeks, they're really about 2 weeks, they may have a difficult time even going forward with the vote. They may have a tough time getting, the number of Democrats they need because now these Democrats cannot say, oh, I just signed on to or voted for or supported, an inquiry, an investigation to see if there was something impeachable. But this will be the actual impeachment vote. And to take that vote, there needs to be something fairly concrete. And to ask a bunch of members to vote in the affirmative to move for impeachment when there's really nothing there is asking a lot more than they were asking a couple weeks ago to vote just for this Inquisition. So it'll be very interesting the next 2 weeks to watch and see what shakes out. But it looks like to me that every day things are getting worse for the bug-eyed fool and Madame Botox and their Inquisition. Now, on a somewhat related matter, we heard today that Trump is suggesting that he would provide written answers to the impeachment committee. Now, I guess this is in response to Madame Botox saying, well, the president should just come and testify. And all this this is nuts. Okay, this is nuts. I'm not a constitutional lawyer, but I do understand the separation of powers. And under the separation of powers, the president really doesn't have to respond to the Congress. They're an equal branch of government. And so, Schiff is not a special counsel. Madame Botox is not a special prosecutor or something like that. They're the Congress. So, I don't know if the separation of powers would prevent the president from even doing this, or if it just is suggested it's not a good idea, that he doesn't have to do it. Now, certainly because of separation of powers, he really doesn't have to do it. I don't know if it's, that he's not allowed to do it, but I know it's a bad freaking idea. I can tell you that when Trump came up with this, he certainly didn't have his lawyers around him or the White House counsel, because they never ever would have let him say that. Now, maybe he's just playing. Trump, how he is. He may not have any intention whatsoever of answering any questions either verbally or written. Maybe he's just playing with Pelosi and Schiff. I don't know. But I can tell you that if he's even remotely halfway serious about responding in any way, shape, or form, written or otherwise, that he's having a bad day. He's having a very, very bad day. And as soon as the White House counsel or his lawyers find out about it, they're going to be picking up the phone and calling him and saying, oh, man, pull that back, walk that back, retract that. No, you're not going to answer any questions, written or otherwise. That's a really bad idea. See, now, I understand where Trump's coming from if he's actually straight here and he's actually suggesting he would mind doing it. Because in Trump's mind, he's innocent. And like any innocent man, you want to scream to the world as loud as you can and proclaim your innocence. Now, if we were in a court of law outside the District of Criminals, where you had a fair judge, a unbiased jury of your peers, you had your defense team, and you had the ability to call witnesses, and you had some ability to represent yourself, then I would say, okay, that would be a different subject. But we're talking about literally a lynching committee run by the bug-eyed fool, where Trump has no rights whatsoever. I can't imagine for the life of me why you would want to suggest that you would cooperate in any way, shape, or form, because even if you have written answers to questions, any lawyer can take anything and spin it into something it is not. And that's exactly what would happen. This would only create more problems. This is just a really, really, really bad idea. And I hope that Trump was just pulling Pelosi's chain. I hope he's joking. It ain't going to happen, okay? Trump's lawyers are never going to let that happen. In fact, as we're talking about this, the demo commies are in the process right now of trying to get the answers in the Q&A from Uncle Bob the Executioner that he gave to Trump. Remember, Trump agreed to answer questions to Uncle Bob the Executioner? Well, the Democrats are trying to get a hold of those Q&As between Trump and Uncle Bob. So they can do what? Find anything they can in there to twist it and spin it into something it's not. And this is exactly what they would do whether he gave a written or oral testimony. This is just crazy. I understand, again, why Trump may feel compelled to do this, but this is a very, very bad idea. And I'm sure this is not going to happen, but I don't know what the game is here, but no, he should not respond in any way, shape, or form to the Inquisition. In fact, if I were advising Trump, and I know he doesn't like to take many people's advice, and he's usually right, but if I were advising him, I would advise him to ignore as much as possible what's going on there, and let his lawyers, let other people go out and handle the fighting against him. Let Jim Jordan, let Scalise, let members of the Freedom Caucus, let Hannity, let Limbaugh, let other people really take on directly the Inquisition. And that's what most people would say, because every time you talk about it, tweet about it, where you bring it up, you keep it in the news. In fact, Trump probably, if Trump were completely ignoring the Inquisition, a lot of people wouldn't even know what's going on unless they watch CNN. So, it's just, how you handle this is tricky because it is the swamp. But at this point, I can say for sure, providing written answers or any answers to any questions, responding in any way, cooperating in any way, it's just like, as most of you know who watch my channel, I said from the very beginning they never should have cooperated with the Mueller witch hunt. From day one, I would have stonewalled that. I never would have cooperated at all. I would have taken it all the way to the Supreme Court. But no, Trump should not respond in any way, shape, or form to the Inquisition. Whew. While all this is going on here in the District of Criminals, things are coming unglued in Iran. If you ever wanted to have a perfect fact-based case for the Second Amendment, look at Iran. So these people in Iran have had multiple uprisings over the past 5-6 years. We've documented them here and been documented other places. The Iranian people have made many efforts. This is at least a half a dozen times now. They've staged these mass demonstrations and strikes and walkouts and things and such all across the country. These are stepped up a bit from what we normally see, because now they're actually doing things like burning buildings down, turning vehicles over, challenging the cops, doing things and such like that. So things are a little bit rougher now than they normally are in these types of uprisings. But the fact of the matter is, just as we see here in the headline story, 67 demonstrators have already been killed. The Iranians, if the protests get big enough and large enough or whatever, powerful enough, they will call out the Republican Guard and they will start firing at you and shooting people. First, they try the tear gas and the smoke grenades and the rubber bullets, and then when that doesn't keep people away, then out comes the real lead starts flying, and that's what's going on in Iran right now. So the sad part of this is that Iran is ripe for a revolution. unfortunately, the people there are disarmed. And they're up against a regime that will gun them down in the street like dogs. Hundreds of them, thousands of them, millions of them, doesn't matter. So the fact that they're disarmed means it's nearly impossible for the Iranian people to actually have a revolution and succeed. Can you imagine our revolution succeeding without us having any weapons? It's nearly impossible. And the sad news is that it's nearly impossible also for another foreign power, the United States or anyone else, to go in and fight on the side of the protesters, because this would create many more problems. I think that the regime change in Iran has to come from within, but I can tell you, for that to happen, there's going to have to be a lot of Iranians willing to be killed in the streets. I mean many thousands and thousands and thousands. That's the sad reality of the fact. So, Iran is ripe for revolution. They just lack firepower. If the Iranians had the right to keep and bear arms, the Ayatollah would be gone, and would have been gone 6 years ago. There you go. The best argument you've ever heard for the Second Amendment, right there. Just ask an Iranian. Well, we have this character, Peter Dayow. Many of you have probably forgotten about this guy, Peter Dayow. He's a former advisor to the Rotten Reverend Clinton. A former advisor to the Rotten Reverend Clinton. Now, this guy, the Rotten Reverend Clinton is a neoliberal. She's a neoliberal, and if she runs, she will run as a neoliberal. But she's got her former, and believe me, he's not doing this without the Rotten Reverend Clinton's approval or orders. He's out there attacking Obama, like a lot of other people, because of the comments that Obama made about the woke culture and about, Democrats wasting their time on things that don't produce any results, and being too far left on Medicare for all, open borders, and these things. So now you got the Rotten Reverend Clinton's former advisor out there hitting Obama from the left. Now, why is the Rotten Reverend Clinton got her former advisor out there hitting Obama from the left? Man, she's playing all the angles. It's desperation. Just desperation is really all it is. So, again, Obama knows this, by the way. Obama knows who Peter Dayow is, and he knows where this is coming from. And I'm pretty sure Biden knows where a lot of the stuff he's taking is coming from. I'm pretty sure that Elizabeth Warren knows where a lot of the heat she's taking is coming from. They know it's all coming from the Rotten Reverend. She's hitting everybody. She's trying to put a kink in everyone's armor to see if she can, shake things up in such a way that she can make sure that there's no clear front runner. Whoever starts to get a little bit of a lead, she attacks them. So, like we see Buttigieg rising in Iowa, she'll probably send someone to go attack him next. The Rotten Reverend Clinton wants the Democrats to arrive at the convention with no clear front runner, so that there can be a brokered convention, so that her name can be added onto the tally, and where she believes with the superdelegates and the corporate players in the Democratic Party, she can pull off an upset and walk out of the convention the Democratic nominee. That's what it looks like to me, but what do I know? Well, it is now confirmed, the story that or so-called, what was rumor 2 days ago, is now confirmed. It looks like Ciaramella did speak to Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, and it appears that both Ciaramella and Vindman are still attending White House meetings. Ciaramella is still attending White House meetings. But this is just, it's amazing. It's like, how is Bruce Orr still working at the DOJ? And Mary Moyer and a lot of these other people. It's just, it's mind-boggling. I have no explanation for it. It doesn't make any sense at all. But that's what we're seeing right here. Two things. Ciaramella spoke to Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, and Ciaramella is still attending White House meetings. That is just absolutely unbelievable. So I was mentioning a little bit earlier when I first started the video, I was talking about the possibility that unless Schiff, the bug-eyed fool in Man in Botox, can actually come up with some pretty good first-hand evidence of Trump committing some high crime or misdemeanor, that when the vote comes for impeachment, the actual vote comes for impeachment, where they actually do impeach the president, and then the trial moves to the Senate, those Democrats, they're going to have to come out and vote for that. That's not the same as they voted for before. Before, they voted for just an investigation to move forward to see if there's enough evidence to impeach the president. But when they actually have to actually vote for impeachment, if in the next 2 weeks or so, some really good evidence of a high crime or misdemeanor isn't presented, it's going to be very, very difficult. And I think it's possible. Now, I know Pelosi can bring a lot of heat, but I think it's possible that they could come up short on the votes. And I'm saying that because we had this one of the two Democrats who voted against moving forward with the Inquisition, this Jeff Van Drew, who's a Democrat from New Jersey. He was on Maria Bartiromo, and he said, I mean, I didn't vote for it before, and I'm not going to, unless they can show me something, I'm certainly not going to vote for the impeachment. And he said that privately and very quietly, other members, Democrats, are telling him that they are very, very concerned about that moment when it comes, and they are asked to vote to support the impeachment if, in fact, no real solid first-hand evidence of high crimes or misdemeanor has been unearthed. So Van Drew is saying that it's possible that it could be very difficult for Pelosi to get the votes unless the bug-eyed fool comes up with something in the next 2 weeks. And yeah, I mean, I get that, but I also know how Washington works. I know how Pelosi works, and she can probably bring enough pressure to get the 230 some odd votes that she needs. She can probably do it. It'll be suicide for quite a few Democrats, but you know, we've seen Democrats do this to their members before. We saw it, as I described once before, in the NAFTA vote. We saw the Democrats force members, just like they forced members in the Obamacare vote, just like they forced them in the NAFTA vote, to vote for something they know is going to end their political careers. But they have ways of applying the pressure in the swamp, particularly in the Democratic Party, that they can usually get it done. And they probably will. Well, let's see. I guess it's time for a quid pro quo Joe update. Yes, Joe Biden, he's good for a gaffe a day. So Biden was announcing his plan to end violence against women. And he did this just 5 days after attending a fundraiser with two Democrats who had formerly been accused of assaults against women. Not to mention his own problems with sniffing them and all that kind of stuff, groping them. So yeah, he attended an event a week ago with Tom Carper, who of course famously known for having to admit he punched his wife in the eye and gave her a black eye. And of course the the even more famous Chris Dodd move, where Chris Dodd was got in trouble for sexually assaulting a waitress in a restaurant in D.C. Now, it wasn't just Dodd, it was Dodd and Ted Kennedy. Yes, Dodd and Ted Kennedy had a few too many drinks and tried to do a sandwich routine on a waitress, kind of like dry humping a waitress, you know, with their clothes on. They're like dry humping a waitress in D.C. When they were, you know, drunk. And, of course, they had to admit to that and apologize for that. So, yeah, Chris Dodd and Tom Carper appearing with Biden at a fundraiser a week ago, and he's out there just yesterday talking about how he's got a plan to end violence against women. Well, you can't end violence against anybody or anything. I mean, what kind of you can't legislate ending violence, right? So I don't know what in the world he's talking about, but he's nuts. We also have, back to the Madam Botox, Botox in response to Republicans saying that the hearings this close to an election is ridiculous and they should just let the American people decide. The Madam Botox has responded to that by telling her colleagues in a memo that it is weak and dangerous to back off and let the American people decide in 2020. Weak and dangerous to back off and let the American people decide in 2020. In other words, it's weak and dangerous because they'll lose. The Democrats will lose if the American people get to make the choice in 2020. They want to make that choice right now, but it's not going to work. In fact, it's going to backfire on them and help Trump even more and hurt them even more. Well, as I mentioned earlier, Lieutenant Colonel Vindman should be charged with lying to Congress. It's one of the charges that Roger Stone was found guilty of. And Vindman sat right there and lied his ass off, because now we know from the Washington Post that Ciaramella did in fact speak to Vindman before coming forward. So now that we know that Vindman lied because he was asked in the hearings if he knew the whistleblower. And he said he did not. He said he did not. But now we have the Washington Post, no friend of Trump, saying, hey, we've got information that Vindman did talk to the whistleblower, Ciaramella, before he filed his complaint. And it's very likely that Vindman is the one who leaked the story to Politico as well. We're learning a lot more about Vindman in the past 48 hours. This dude needs to be called right back into Congress. He actually needs to be charged right now with lying to Congress. But we have even more from Paul Sperry. Paul Sperry says that this NSC official that I was talking about on yesterday's video, Tim Morrison, learned of the whistleblower after discussions with Vindman about contacts Vindman had made outside his chain of command regarding the July 25th call, the contents of which were leaked to the whistleblower who was with another agency, the CIA, and not privy to the info. So here is Morrison, after telling us that he didn't trust Vindman's judgment and kept him out of the loop, and that other people around the NSC felt the same way. They kept information from Vindman because they believed he was leaking. Here we have Morrison now saying that Vindman had made contacts with people outside his chain of command, outside his agency, which he is not permitted to do. That would be a leak of classified information, an unauthorized release or leak of classified information. There's two crimes he's guilty of right there. I have no idea why this guy's not been arrested at this point. Vindman is a total fraud. He's totally being exposed in the last 48 hours. And the more you dig into this guy, the more dirt you find. They need to drag his ass right back in there. Or better yet, they don't even need to. He's already made his testimony. All they need to do, the DOJ, should fact check these two stories. And if they turn out to be true, go arrest him. That's what you did to Roger Stone. Give him a Roger Stone raid. Now, Back to Lee Smith, the book, of course, that I'm reading. So chapter 3. Chapter 3 is a very short chapter, but it's an important chapter because it lays out in chapter 2, it kind of gives a chronology of the media leaks. And it's really dedicated to, in this chapter, reminding us of how much of a role the media played in the Spygate coup, the conspiracy. And as I've said many times here on TowerGate, the media went beyond just reporting this stuff. They knew they were active participants in the coup. They knew they were getting this classified information. They knew who they were getting it from and why they were getting it, what the purpose of it was. And it was to frame the president or people around him. Journalists have the right to get classified information and to publish it. They have the right to work with their sources and instruct their sources and do all sorts of things. But they do not have the right to knowingly participate in illegal activity, and framing someone, regardless of who they are, is a crime. Especially in a presidential campaign. That's why I say, now I doubt that Durham is going to criminally charge any journalist, although I think he should. I think that at the very least we are going to find out when Durham's finished with his investigation exactly how much of a role the media played. Remember, it wasn't just that they were a bunch of dupes. The media wasn't a bunch of dupes in all this. They were active participants in the conspiracy. And that is a crime. I think many journalistic careers are going to be destroyed when Durham completes his investigation. I do hope some of these people are held accountable criminally, but I doubt he's going to go after journalists. But he probably could. He can probably lean on some of them and get them to talk. But anyway, this chapter literally goes through and shows us that beginning in about March of 2016 is when the media smear campaign kicked into high gear against Trump. Right about the time that Confusion GPS began doing their work for the rotten Reverend Clinton. And we know who was behind a lot of this stuff was Confusion GPS. Now, that's why I say if Durham is wise, and he is wise, and I believe he'll probably do this at some point, he will subpoena the bank records of Confusion GPS and find out where those payments were being made to. Because I'm pretty damn sure that if you take a look at the payments from Confusion GPS, you'll find that they were probably paying people in the Ukraine. I think you'll find that they were paying Izakov. I think you'll find that they were paying Mr. Devlin and various other people, journalists, to put out the trash. But he also focuses, so anyway, that's chapter 3. It's just story after story after story after story after story, literally hundreds of media stories that are Trump-Russia related, that were just flooding the media beginning in about March 21st. Also, at about that same time, that is the day that Trump did the interview with the Washington Post, and they asked him who his foreign policy team was. That is when he drops the name Carter Page and George Papadopoulos. 2 days later, we get the first story on Carter Page, and of course, that's about the time that they started running the frame-ups on Papadopoulos. So I do remember reporting on that on the TowerGate video back at that time. It's in my timeline. And that's when the media strategy really kicked into high gear. And all coordinated from Confusion GPS, who was working for the rotten Reverend Clinton. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. See you guys. Bye.